Speaking Basketball Podcast. My name is Ben, and welcome back to another. Did I get you with that one?
I didn't know we were like starting off with like the NPR style podcast.
Yes, it just hit me. I thought, why don't we test out an NPR style intro and see how it goes? Well, if I don't do it the same way, I get messages. People like send me messages. They're like, you didn't do the intro and the outro right. What's going on? So maybe it's a bad idea to go all NPR.
I feel like if you nail the outro, people should actually be mad about that. I think it's actually like better when stuff happens in the outro that just gets a little bit unhinged. Like to me, that's the excitement of ending the show.
You mean like every outro I've done this year, just totally unhinged?
Well, I also kind of like the fact that like sometimes we'll end the show, but then we have like a phantom segment. It's like, what random thing can we talk about here? You know, I like that.
You're maybe teasing it a little too much. I feel like it's an Easter egg that only those who go past, like, do you remember back in the day, I used to put Easter eggs after the credits in the YouTube videos? I would just slip in a little extra play there at the end.
I'm going to be honest with you. There were a couple times where you were like, did you see that play at the end of the video? And I'm like, I'm the guy that moves on as soon as the credits start. I started watching, actually, in the most recent ones, I started watching all the way to the end because I started realizing, but I'm like, oh, you actually are putting stuff in the end there. So, you know, I'm there. I think you have to let people know there's an Easter egg. Like, if you're the MCU, like, people have to get excited about what goes on after the credits. And then if you don't have it, like, it's going to screw everything up. So I think the information has to get out there first.
Is it an Easter egg if you tell people it's an Easter egg? That's today's philosophy question for you to pack into your pipe. Cody, there's been some exciting basketball taking place. We got like 10 games in. We have a nice little sample. You've lifted your stats moratorium. I'm just taking a look here at our board for Patreon subscribers, patreon.com/thinkingbasketball. The Celtics look good. The Sixers look good. The Nuggets look good. The Timberwolves look good. Is Dallas for real? We have to sort out where these teams belong.
Okay. Stats moratorium done. Sure. But there's something I want to know if you know this off the top of your head, because it's driving me a little bit crazy when I'm looking at a lot of the team level numbers. So we look at the top of the league, offensively at least, and I think defensively it's kind of the same thing. You know, Dallas as a team, their offensive rating is 123. Right?
No,
Indiana Pacers.
That's 123. That's a lot.
Indiana Pacers 122.6. Because we all knew the Pacers would have a 120 offensive rating. The 76ers have a 120 plus offensive rating. But Ben, here's where it starts. I don't know. It hurts a little bit. There are multiple teams that have less than 109 offensive rating. So like the range between it all is just like so skewed, and I don't recall like that much of a range before from the top of the league to the bottom of the league. Is this something that, like, am I wrong about it? Last year was there this much of a gap, or at the beginning of the season are we going to start seeing it like close together? I don't know. That's the one statistical thing that's bothering me right now.
How many of the teams with a 109 offensive rating or less come from the city of Los Angeles? That's what I want to know.
The answer, Ben, is 0.
Oh, no. The Lakers got over 109?
Oh, they got 110.3, baby.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
110.3. And what's league average? Like 113?
This is my point. The league, yeah, it's 113, but league average is like so weird right now because, like, I don't know, I'm looking at like the 76ers or the Timberwolves, I think, and it's like, are they really going to have a defense that's 10 points better than league average at the end of the season? Like, the data is just so strange to me right now. So it's still hard for me to look at the team level data and take really anything away from it. Obviously, there's like a trend because we're an eighth of the way through the season already. So it's like, okay, part of this at least has to be real, but still that gap, that range is still, it's throwing me for a loop, Ben.
I think it has to do with the small sample. I mean, last year at a similar point in the season, it was like, the best team was around 119. I think it was the Celtics started really well. So maybe not these 120 numbers that you're seeing, but the Los Angeles teams last year were at the bottom of the league in the same time frame after 10 or 11 games. They were like 104, 106. So that's a 15 or 16 point spread, which I think is pretty similar. What would you say? We have a 17 point, 18 point spread right now?
Yeah, it's about that, yeah.
Yeah, so I think it's probably something to do with sample size. I don't expect multiple teams to be 10 points ahead of the league average in offensive rating. I mean, the Pacers and the Mavs right now are like plus 10. League average is around 113 points per 100. And I just want to say, Cody, I said in the preseason show, I said a lot of things that were all wrong, okay? But I did say, watch out, the Pacers are a sneaky little bunch with Rick Carlisle, and they kind of have a very cool, like, Sacramento Kings East light vibe going. They like to run similar actions. They like to involve these, like, three-man bunch Spain pick and rolls in the middle of the paint. They love to send all their wings sprinting out to the three-point line early in the shot clock to shoot threes. Buddy Hield and your favorite player, rookie Nembhard, who's no longer a rookie. We'll have to call him by his real name, Andrew Nembhard. But no, I mean, guys like Buddy Hield, Ben Mathurin, Tyrese Halliburton is always looking to set those players up. They also have multiple players that will shoot the three. So yeah, I mean, they're a sneaky good offensive team, but the defense isn't there.
Jalen Smith of the Indiana Pacers.
Yes, Jalen Smith. Yes.
Have you looked at his stats? Have you looked at his small sample size stats yet for the season?
What happened? What did he do?
So he is currently in, what is it, like 142 minutes, it looks like. He's averaging 23 points per 75, plus 24 relative true shooting.
It's nothing. That's absolutely nothing.
I see that number and I'm like, all right, that has to contribute like at least a point or two in terms of their offensive rating. But they're really fun because they have like this weird, totally spaced out thing, even like Obi Toppin coming there. Like, I didn't see him as being a guy that's just going to stand in the corner and shoot lots of threes. He had a huge dunk, I think, against the 76ers. So he's still got like that lob threat, but he's a dude that likes to stand behind and shoot a lot of threes. So I just think the all-out 5-out spacing and then the completely selling out the like early 2000s Mavericks where they're like, hey, we're just going to go all offense and no defense. The Pacers are definitely giving me that kind of vibe because, yeah, they are frisky. They're definitely frisky offensively, Ben. But they are not frisky defensively, Ben. So I think that's a really interesting gambit, and I don't know if they'll be able to turn that around, and I don't know if they want to turn that around.
Okay, let's get serious. Let's try to sort out around this time of year. I think every year now that we've done this. What is this, like our sixth year? I've completely lost track of time. But it's time. I think it's time for us to check in with the league and figure out like where are we kind of roughly seeing these teams. Cody has a term that we use around here, the inner circle contenders. That's our serious championship contenders. Then we have a group that's kind of on the outside usually. Then we have good teams that are interesting and frisky, and then, you know, playoff teams. And we're trying to just sort out the small sample madness. Like, for instance, are the Houston Rockets actually going to finish with the 4th seed in the Western Conference? So I assume I'm gonna make some assumptions here, which doesn't go well. I'm gonna assume you have the Celtics as an inner circle championship contender, and I'm gonna assume you have the Nuggets as an inner circle championship contender. Both of those teams have the pedigree. They have the lineup on paper. They look good when you watch them, and they have crushed the league to start the year. Both those teams have great metrics up and down the board. Do you want to put anyone else in your inner circle championship contender group right now?
Okay, so let's get philosophical here. Let's define some things.
Is it going to be the question I asked you earlier?
I don't even know what you asked me earlier.
I asked you a philosophical question earlier, and I told you to put it in your pipe and smoke it, remember?
Well, now we're going to pass that pipe right back here. I straight up don't even remember the question, Ben.
I don't remember the question either. All right, let's go.
So when you say inner circle contending team, are you thinking like fast forward to June and this team is holding the championship trophy? Are you surprised? Like, is that kind of what you're thinking with the inner circle talk?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, you created the term, so I think that sums it up. This is a team that you, on your short list, as you said, you're envisioning them being a team that can easily win in June. Yeah.
Okay. I think right now those are the only two teams actually in the inner circle. There might be a couple like bubble teams that need to prove it a little bit more, but those are the only two teams that are like solidly in the circle right now. Is that how you feel?
That's exactly how I feel. So we'll just table them. We'll put a little pin in them. We'll get back to them when more interesting stuff happens. Cool. The bubble teams is where it starts to get fun right now, I think, Cody. Because it's basically like, who's really legitimately very good. Not legitimately good in the sense that they could have a nice seed and they could maybe win a playoff round. Like, who else is knocking on the door for when we come back in a month? We go, of course they have to be included in this conversation. We have more than 2 teams that are championship contenders this year. Who are some of these other teams for you?
Well, I think one of the first teams we have to talk about here are the Philadelphia 76ers. I don't know how much we want to talk about them today, but they are on an absolute tear this year so far.
I think so. I think we have more stuff to get to with Philly later on, so we will also put a little pin in them and come back to them. But Philly is definitely a team that I think is very, very good, and the questions we'll have to address when we circle back to them is, can this be a team? I mean, will they make a move in the midseason? What's going to happen with Kelly Oubre's situation? Kelly Oubre, for those who missed it, was unfortunately in an accident. He was hit by a car and he has some injuries, and he's okay, but he's going to miss a significant amount of time. They hope, or they say it's not season ending, but it will be a significant amount of time because there's some broken bones and things like that. So they have to kind of continue to sort out their lineup. I don't know what they're going to look like in January or February, but I think the short of it is, with Philly, you have Embiid, you have Tyrese Maxey, and you have Nick Nurse as a new coach, and the things they've done with the roster are really strong. I would definitely put them in this next group. I'm not ready to move them up into the inner circle contender. Probably depth is a big thing that I want to see with them going forward, but yeah, that's where I am on Philly.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. Tyrese Maxey just dropped his first 50-piece of his career, I think, like yesterday. And I only watched a bit of that game, but it looks like he's developing as a handler. It looks like he's developing as a decision maker. He's able to just move a little bit quicker without Harden there and new coaching there. So I think there's some really interesting changes there. But like you said, like once we get to the playoffs, if a team's able to, you have like the Brooklyn Nets out there and they're like, we're just going to double team Embiid anytime he exists on the court. Like, is Maxey going to be able to figure that out? And even if they're able to scheme for a way that they can like take out both of them or really defend both of them well, what other guys on the 76ers are dangerous? So I think there's, like you just said, there's still some questions in terms of the third guy that's going to step up, the fourth guy. Because I think like defensively, I really like their defensive personnel. And I might, even though the statistics right now are pointing towards an offense that's stronger, I might like the defensive ecosystem more than the offensive ecosystem. That's probably a really early thought process on them right now, but that's just kind of where I'm leaning towards right now. So offensively, I want to see how the other guys are able to step up.
Okay, next team for me that's potentially in this group that's very interesting to think about right now is your hometown team, sort of, the Minnesota Timberwolves. They have started the season 7-2. They have the best defense in the league by a mile. We will continue to monitor this situation. We might have some deep dive video content on it coming up in the future. But just for perspective, we talked about that 113 league-wide offensive rating. Timberwolves giving up 103 points per 100 possessions. That is 10 points better than the league. Off the top of my head, if that holds, that'll be the best defense, best relative defense in NBA history. But it's a small sample. We see starts like this all the time. I think the thing to know here, as we talked about last episode with the Defensive Player of the Year candidates, is they are pretty loaded defensively. I think it's legit. Anthony Edwards coming on gives them a little more punch in general on offense, but also I'm thinking about transitioning from being a young team to a more veteran team. Kyle Anderson getting good minutes. You just have the ability to win close games, and we've already seen that. The rock fight that they had with the Celtics recently that went into overtime, and Anthony Edwards taking over the game in overtime. So they look like a very strong team to me, very legit. Again, I wouldn't put them in the inner circle crew, but I think this is a team that, at the end of the year, looks like they might be one of the 5 or 6 best teams in basketball. So they're right in this next group for me right now.
And just for context, I'm pretty sure you just said they're 10 points better than league average on defense. The 2004 Detroit Pistons, after the Rasheed Wallace trade, I think for the rest of that season they were like 12 points better.
Yeah,
than
no,
league
that's
average.
not fair. There was only half a year with the after the trade and then the deadline or whatever. But yeah, that's the gold standard.
I still think it's important to show that like they're sort of approaching that ballpark, right? They're sort of approaching it, but they're still like a couple points off from like a full blown Rasheed Wallace Pistons post trade. Let me ask you something about the Timberwolves then. Why, if they, we talked last time, they have some of the best defensive personnel. They have our current defensive player of the year pick. We both really like Jaden McDaniels on defense. Like you said, Kyle Anderson's just brilliant everywhere. I love the man. Why are they not an inner circle team for you right now?
Well, I think it's that deep playoff. I've talked about this before. The difference between winning 2 playoff series in the NBA playoff tournament and 4 is a big level, especially if you have a high seed. Because what it means is you can beat a low seed or a play-in team, and you can beat a 4 or a 5 seed or something like that with home court, maybe a 3 seed if the 3 seed isn't that strong. But when you get to the Final Four, typically, you're playing the other championship contenders, and I don't yet see a strong reason to believe that in a playoff setting, Minnesota's constructed, they have the roster, they have the experience, whatever you want to say, to really be considered like neck and neck with some of those teams they would see down the stretch. But I mean, if you want to push back and make the case, I'm all ears.
No, I really don't want to make the case. I think defensively, I think that their defense should be able to hold up. I know there's been a lot of clowning of Rudy Gobert in the playoffs. I don't foresee that sort of thing happening again in the playoffs just because of the personnel that's around them. But offensively, and I know right now their offense is a little bit negative. I think they're a point worse than league average in terms of offensive rating. But when it comes down to a playoff series, let's say conference semifinals, let's say conference finals, if they happen to make it that far, I don't right now trust either Karl Anthony Towns or Anthony Edwards at a high-level decision-making sort of situation. So I'm even thinking about that Celtics game, and I think there's a chance that, like, if they replay that again, the Timberwolves probably should have and easily could have won in regulation. And I think a big part of what pushed them to be so close that they went to overtime is Anthony Edwards sometimes gets the hero ball thing in his head. He goes in, he's going to 17 seconds on the shot clock. I'm going to pull from 19 feet away. Or I'm going to back down and take this turnaround, right? Because when he gets like a head start and he gets downhill, he's one of the most unstoppable players. But sometimes he's just like, I need to take this jump shot. And sometimes Towns, we've seen this in the playoffs a few times, he's the captain of getting in his head during a game, right? He starts getting angry and he throws these like he's a softball player, Ben. Like he like curls it like a bowling ball and like whips it underhand. And it's just like the angrier he gets, the more like wild those passes get. So both of those guys right now, I think, still need to show me some maturation in terms of decision making on offense. And that, to me, those are the two main things holding me back from really thinking they're contenders.
Okay, I buy that. Do we have another team here that you would put in this fringe candidate group?
What about what do you think about the best offense in the league? What do you think about the Dallas Mavericks?
Well, boy, that's a good question. I think the Mavericks are good. Here's the thing. The offense last year was not the problem, right? 2 years ago, they went to the conference finals in the Western Conference. And that was a sort of interesting construction for a team. Maybe this goes back to my point about 2-round teams versus 4-round teams. They had a matchup with Phoenix that I thought was a good matchup for them. They were able to come back and win a very close series. They were punchy. They were feisty. They offered some particularly resilient sort of approaches to offense with Luka Doncic. And at that point in time, you had Jalen Brunson and you had Spencer Dinwiddie. So you had like multiple ball handlers, multiple point guards, and these 3-and-D guys. Maxi Kleber had a huge role in that run as a defender and then as a pick and pop big man. You mentioned Rudy Gobert, able to stretch the floor and space the floor against a rim protector like that in their playoff series. So you fast forward to last year. To me, Cody, they just ran out of bodies. They ran out of big men. They ran out of defenders. They were already playing small. Kleba is already on the small side for some of those lineups. Dorian Finney-Smith playing like center is almost micro ball. Then they traded him to Brooklyn. So if you look at the numbers last season, Luka, and even after the Kyrie trade, Kyrie Irving coming over, the offensive ratings were always over 120. They were really, really good when they were on the court. 123, 125, things like that. The problem was the defense. The defense was even worse. They were like, some of those lineups, I think with Luka and Kyrie, they might have been +3 or something like that. So a slight margin of victory or slight positive net rating. But I mean, the defensive numbers were like in the 120s as well. And this was the problem. And this led to the wheels kind of coming off the rail at the end of the season as they missed the play-in. Last year, of course, was a really competitive year. And so what was the difference between that team last year just having the right construction or having the right injury or getting an extra big man? I don't know, but that takes me to where they are now because all of a sudden Derek Lively's there, right? And now Derek Lively changes things because he gives you that Clint Capella rim-running screener vertical option for Luka on offense to play pick and roll, which is exactly what he wants, and he fills the defensive need. Grant Williams, big offseason acquisition. He's a good three-point shooter when he's open behind the line as a spot-up guy, and he helps you fill in defensively with another big forward, another big, strong defender who can guard different positions and play different roles and things like that. They even start Derek Jones Jr. now. And I don't know how sustainable that is in certain playoff series because of his outside shooting. He's going to have his pick of all the shots he wants. That when you turn on a Dallas game this year, you will notice that Derek Jones Jr., he can do whatever he wants right before he shoots the basketball. He can sign an autograph, and he can wave to the fans, and he can change his playlist on his iPod. Is iPod still a thing? Do people still have iPods? Anyway, yeah, Cody's telling me no.
I think you're like a decade late with this one. Unless you're like a contract killer in a David Fincher movie, then I think maybe the iPod might still be in vogue.
So he's turning the Smiths on right before he goes to shoot. I almost give a spoiler away related to Derek Jones Jr.'s outside shot, but I'll just skip over that. We can't spoil that movie, right? It just came out.
Definitely not. We can't.
No spoilers on that movie. But back on track, Derek Jones Jr. is going to be wide open, and he's playing for defense. He's playing for that length, that versatility, that rebounding. And so all of a sudden, like you said, Cody, you go look up the Dallas profile, and the offense is still humming. We have to talk about Luka Doncic in a second and his outside shot and what's going on there. But now you take a defense that was leaking badly last season. They're still not very good overall, but now they're passable. Now they're only like slightly below league average. I think, let me see what their number is on our board. They're 24th. 15 teams in the league, they're 30 teams in the league, they're 24th. So they're below average. But when your offense is that good, you just need the defense to tread water. And so that's kind of where my headspace is. Like, they're good, but let's talk about if they're actually legitimately good.
I think team construction is both it's both a positive and a negative for the Mavericks right now. Because we look at the guys that are like Grant Williams is almost the perfect kind of forward to put next to Luka Doncic, right? That's the kind of guy that's really happy to get physical, play some good defense. He's mixed in some good creation a little bit. Like, he's not like going to create much, but he's able to dribble in and do a couple of things this year. Josh Green, fantastic defensive player. Also, I think his passing is much more developed than Grant Williams, but this is another guy that can take advantage of being wide open in the corner. And then, like you said, Derek Lively, but then also Dwight Powell. Both of these guys are just like terrific rim runners that are ready to just throw down lobs at any time. On a team construction level, this is almost the ideal kind of roster that you would imagine around Luka Doncic, mostly because this is the kind of roster that you would want to see around LeBron James when he was in his prime, right? Like, just put him around a bunch of, get some 3-and-D type of guys, let him create. Kyrie Irving is like a secondary valve. Like, let's just give him the ball, everyone's scrambling, and he can kind of dance in and do something that way. But I think the overall question that holds me back with this team is, even though it's an ideal build for somebody like Luka Doncic, have we kind of left this kind of team build behind, Ben? Like, is this the kind of team that, even though it's going to maximize how good Luka Doncic is and take advantage of just how ridiculous he is at finding all of these seams for the rim runners and finding open shooters, is that going to hold up in the playoffs? Like, is this the kind of thing that can be schemed against a little bit more than some of the more modern types of offenses we're seeing? That's what's holding up with me right now, is I'm a little bit concerned about whether or not this is a more obsolete style of basketball in terms of going for a championship.
First of all, if you had Cody Bingo slipping LeBron James in an episode at 23 minutes and 30 seconds of the timestamp, I mean, you have won this week. Congratulations. We all saw what you did there.
Listen,
Cody.
I'm waiting like that ESPN paycheck of me just saying his name every time. Like I can't ignore the change sound that goes into my bank account every time it comes up. So it's not even bingo at this. It's my livelihood, Ben. It is my livelihood to bring up LeBron James.
Okay, noted. Well noted. To your other basketball points about the Dallas Mavericks, they're still playing slowly, right? They're 22nd in offensive pace. So it's not like they're grabbing it and driving it down your throat. There's still a deliberateness to it. There's still a tempo to it. But, I mean, they are the most efficient half-court offense in the league based on how we categorize things on our board at thinkingbasketball.net. That's coming from synergy data that looks at a bunch of different play types and things like that. And as you said, it is built around a lot of this traditional spread pick and roll, this sort of quote-unquote heliocentric concept of how to play basketball. The very thing that many people are lambasting James Harden for, in retrospect right now as the Clippers thing goes off the rail. And we're still not allowed to talk about the Clippers yet, right, Cody? Yeah.
Honestly, the whole James Harden of it all makes me closer to want to talk about them. So get the Clippers warmed up. Like, let's turn on the oven and let's toss it in there and let's bring it out at some point when it's piping hot.
Well, I mean, they played the Clippers. The Mavs played the Clippers the other day, and they had this ridiculous 35-4 run in the middle of the first half. You did not mishear me, by the way. They went on a 35-4 run. I don't even remember over what time frame. It was like 7 or 8 minutes in the heart of the first half between like the first and the second quarter. So on one hand, you have the Dallas offense, which I'll talk about in a second. But on the other hand, you had the Clippers defense only scoring 4 points, which the Clippers offense only scoring 4 points, which is a testament to the Mavs defense and the improvement of the Mavs defense that we've talked about. And it's also some of the insanity happening with the Clippers that we'll get to at another point in time. But Cody, I thought that 35-4 run was a real interesting case study or microcosm, if we could count it against the Clippers. I was thinking as I was watching this, I was like, does this count? Because it's against the Clippers. But what you saw there wasn't simply Dallas going, give Luka the ball, send the big man up to set a screen, spread the court, and everybody remains still, right? It's a little bit more fluid and dynamic because Luka's in better shape this year to start the season. He looks good physically. We'll talk about the shot in a second, but he looks good physically. So you can run actions where you involve 3 players. You have the big man with the basketball. Luka goes away and gets a screen, and then Luka can be on the move getting that handoff with another screener. Those actions are tricky for defenses sometimes to understand who's going to switch and who's going to guard where. Luka can pass out of those actions, and he is incredibly dangerous as a passer, obviously. Kyrie Irving can be involved in those actions. Kyrie Irving can pass as maybe an extra passer out of those actions, and they can shoot out of those actions. And of course, when you have Kyrie Irving, who's a great shooter, Luka's shot's much better. And then of course you can just get into the traditional pick and roll stuff. And so some of that where you're setting screens for Kyrie Irving, you're setting screens for Tim Hardaway, and you're getting him the ball on the move. Luka's moving a little bit more, combined with all the different ways the Mavs can use Luka on offense in the pick and roll game. And he just started to okay, you're going to play this one coverage. You're going to switch. I'm going to give Ivica Zubac a step back 3. You're going to play this other coverage. You're going to double me. Shoot it over to Kyrie Irving. He's going to be wide open for a 3 because you put 2 on me. We're going to run pick and roll. You're going to come down the lane. You're going to send that extra help defender over. Bam. I'm going to skip it over to the corner for someone who's got a wide open 3, or they can attack off a closeout or whatever. He just started to build up the rhythm of how I'm going to systematically take your defense apart based on not a single stationary pick and roll set, but staggered screens, moving into handoffs, all this other stuff. And then before you know it, then he's no-looking Kawhi Leonard. There's this one play that just blew my brains out. Kawhi Leonard slides over to take away the roll man. So they bring 3 defenders to stop 2. Luka is turning the corner in this action, picks up the dribble like he's going to throw it out to the man that Kawhi Leonard just left on the wing, and before Kawhi even knows he's going to commit to the wing, throws it to the roller anyway that Kawhi is standing in front of. Just brilliant basketball. So all of that to me makes me think, yeah, the offense is still not really going to be a huge problem, even though it does have this sort of maybe passé construction to it.
So I guess I want to go back and revise a little bit what I was saying, because I didn't mean to imply that, like, hey, we're going to give Luka the ball up top and we're going to run some pick and rolls, because it is a little bit more complicated than that. However, I do feel like there's a couple of sorts of set plays that I see them run over and over, and just because of Luka's brilliance and just because of Kyrie's, I think he's pretty unstoppable. I don't want to say unstoppable, but he's pretty incredible on a lot of those second side actions when people are scrambling. Because like I said, when he gets into his handling bag, like, he's pretty difficult to stay in front of, especially when you're trying to recover to him. But like, you know, the Mavericks have been going with this, a little bit of a Spain action, a Spain pick and roll action, and they're using Tim Hardaway Jr. as the guy that's the second screener, the guy that's screening the screener. So you have this action where you have one guy that's diving to the rim, somebody like maybe Derek Lively, right? And then you have Tim Hardaway Jr. popping out, okay? And they kind of change up the angle of these screens depending on exactly how the defense is reacting to it. But when Tim Hardaway Jr. pops out, like, he is shooting, I don't know what he's shooting off the top of my head, but his three-point percentage has to be off the charts right now, especially on wide open looks this season. And so you have like these, not just like, here's gravity from one guy sitting here and here's gravity of another guy sitting near the rim. There's like multiple pulls of guys moving in these opposite directions. And then you have Luka Doncic moving towards the rim from this angle, and you just have to make all of these decisions at one time. And I feel like I see the Mavericks go to that kind of set like over and over. And just because Luka is so brilliant and Derek Lively's a great rim finisher and Tim Hardaway Jr. can shoot those threes, they get good looks out of it. And they do these kinds of things. Like you said, the stagger screens. They put Tim Hardaway Jr. in a lot of these stagger screens because, again, he's able to pop out. Another one of these bigs like Powell also can roll to the rim. You have these dueling gravities, right? But it's still one of those things where it's like, I see these sets a lot. And I feel like if we came down to it in a playoff setting, I don't know, maybe there's nothing you can really do against like the complete brilliance of Luka Doncic, but it still feels a little bit more scripted and singular compared to other guys. Like if you look at the time of possession numbers that you have in the thinkingbasketball.net database, like the second highest time of possession is Jalen Brunson in the league at 47%. And there's only like 6 guys that have over 40% of time of possession. Luka Doncic is at 49%. Like, he is knocking on the door of having the ball 50% of the time. And I just feel like when you have someone having the ball that much, that gets a little bit easier to scheme for.
Yeah, but I think this also gets us to the Luka of the whole situation, which is very interesting. Mm-hmm. And by the way, Tim Hardaway is actually only at 38%. I say, quote unquote, only at 38% this year, because Kyrie Irving's at 40%, Josh Green is at 40%, Grant Williams is at 50%. The Mavs lead the league in threes. They've made 175 threes in 10 games. I'm not a math major, but I think that's about 17 and a half a game. And they're shooting 40% as a team. And Cody just had an incredible reaction to that, because I get the same way. When I see a team shooting 40%, I get all warm and fuzzy thinking about Steve Nash and the 7-second Suns. And it's not to make a comparison here. We just said this team was slower. But if you actually get great shots and you have good enough shooters around you, and Luka himself has improved his shot, then I'm not saying in the playoffs it'll be as easy. I think your point is something I agree with right now in terms of adjustments in the postseason taking away some of these actions. But I'd certainly in the regular season it's sustainable, and in the playoffs, even if you take it from a 10 down to an 8, I still think the offense is really good. The Luka part of it, Cody, we've teased it long enough. Has he finally improved the shot? Is it happening? Is Larry Bird 1984 coming? Is like you go from Luka taking a ton of outside shots, shooting in the low 70s from the free throw line in his career. These are his free throw numbers for the first 5 years of his career: 71%, 76%, 73%, 74%, 74%. He's just under 80% right now, and he's shooting over 40% from three on over 10 3-point attempts a game. The Step back looks good. The mid-range numbers look good. He's over 50% in the mid-range. He's just cooking people in the mid-range with the high release, the size he's able to use when he's matched up with smaller guards. My big question that I've been waiting for, if the shot is legit, how does that change kind of everything almost about how you have to defend him? Does he become kind of indefensible in the same way that like when Nikola Jokic started turning into Dirk Nowitzki from the outside, you just went like, well, there's no weaknesses anymore. There's nothing you can do.
Statistically, something that like makes me a little bit wary with these numbers is when Luka's on the court with Kyrie, and I think this is 1 day old, so I think maybe based off yesterday's game, things could be changed a little bit here. But with Kyrie on the court with him, Luka Doncic is shooting 75% true shooting. 75% true shooting. But when he's on the court without Kyrie, it drops down to 55% true shooting. And I think overall, when I was looking at those long mid-range numbers, or I think it was long mid-range numbers, he was shooting like you said, around 50%. Previous seasons, he wasn't quite that high. Like I thought it was a significant jump to the point where I'm like, I don't necessarily know if Luka Doncic like improved this much over the course of one season. So I think there's a little bit of small sample size trickery in terms of like how much the shot has improved. I definitely think his shot has improved. I still don't love the shot selection itself, but the fact that he's able to shoot these percentages while still taking, what I consider to be not great shots a lot of the time. I do think there is some improvement, but I think it's overstated by the numbers right now.
Well, yeah, let's be clear. There is no way that the improvement is this great. This would be like the greatest single shooting improvement in the history of the sport, because right now, 42% threes on 10 threes a game. No, that would just be absolutely unbelievable. But if he's 37 or 38% from downtown on this volume, and if he's like, let's say mid to high 40s on the long twos as another indicator that shot is stable, I think that's the kind of shooting upgrade that you're looking for. You're looking to get that free throw percentage into the 80s from the low and mid 70s at. And, if we're looking forward to the postseason, I'm not ready to put them in the inner circle group, but I do think they're in this next group probably. I think they're good. I think they're good. I still can't decide how good.
How do you feel about the interplay or the synergy between Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving?
It looks fine right now. Okay. Yeah. I think the challenge with that is who knows what's coming. Does it hold up? That's always the question. But it looks good. Yeah. What do you think?
It feels to me that Kyrie's taking a little bit more of a back seat, which is like fine. But part of it is like, I don't know if we're squeezing all of the juice out of this lemon. Like I think we're leaving. Like have you ever seen those memes where it shows like a chicken wing and like all of it's eaten and like somebody's basically like broken it and sucked out the bone marrow too, but then like on the other end of the spectrum there's still like hunks of chicken on there? Like I feel like we haven't gnawed all the meat off this chicken yet, right? We haven't taken the chicken wing, we haven't taken our sweet honey barbecue, and we haven't, we just haven't gotten it all yet. And that's how I feel between these two. Like, I think there's a nice little, there's only been, Ben, as of yesterday, there was only 5 minutes that the Mavericks played this season without either Luka Doncic or Kyrie Irving on the court, right? So I think a big part of it, too, is like, there's really never a time when both of them are on the bench and they're both good enough that they can buoy that offensive number. But I just don't necessarily see the additive nature of it between the two of them.
What? Is that a real meme? What? Did you just make that up? What's going on?
Well, I feel like I'm picturing something where it's like somebody's holding up a chicken wing and there's still like a good hunk of chicken on there and they're like, I killed these chicken wings. I don't know what accent that was.
This is crazy. Please, someone listening, either in the YouTube comments somewhere, please let us know. Is this an actual meme? Or is this just some crazy Minnesota TV programming? Is this like late at night, there's like an advertisement with a guy eating the bone marrow out of a chicken. By the way, how are you cooking your bone marrow in chicken wings? That can't be a thing. I've never had bone marrow from a chicken wing.
Are you dissing the late night programming of KR11 over here in Minnesota?
I'm not. Who said I'm dissing it? This sounds spectacular. I'm just saying this is some incredible late night programming. Okay.
For the record, boneless wings are just fine. Carry on.
Okay. All right. I'm just curious. Let's use Dallas as a benchmark now. We've talked about them for about 2 hours. Milwaukee Bucks, Dallas Mavericks. Who are you? Who are you? Are they in the same tier? Are they, where are you in your head in terms of looking toward the long haul of the season? Are you still thinking Milwaukee is a different class of team because they've got multiple superstars and they've got this, Giannis Antetokounmpo player and did I break you?
So I feel like there's a lot of podcasts when people talk about the NBA, and there's somebody that's always like, I was texting some anonymous source from the NBA. This is kind of like one of those cases, but it wasn't an anonymous source in the NBA. I was just texting Kurt the other day, Ben. I was texting Kurt.
Kurt is a legend around here.
Absolutely. Yeah. And he asked me, he said, on a scale of 1 to 10, how concerned are you about the Bucks championship odds? And I responded, I'm at an 8 right now. I'm at an 8.
Yeah.
I don't know from what we've seen so far this season if I can even put the Bucks in the bubble of title contenders right now.
Okay. What about the Phoenix Suns? This is so fun, Cody. I mean, this is just, we're like 3 weeks into the NBA season. The NBA Cup is about to, this is wild. All these super teams are falling apart. North is south, up is down.
Can I ask you an embarrassing question as an NBA analyst, something that I should know?
Is it embarrassing for me or for you?
For me. I should know the answer to this, and I don't. I'm not going to Google it. I'm gonna let everyone know that I don't know the answer to this.
Okay. All right. I would have been more comfortable if you were going to embarrass me, but all right.
Oh, that's interesting. We might need to unpack that at the end of the episode.
We'll do that later on at the end of the show. We'll do that after the outro. That's so incorrect. Yeah.
Has Bradley Beal played this year?
Yeah. Okay. Bradley Beal has played.
I haven't watched the Suns in a while.
No. It's a fair question because they haven't. I don't think all three of them have been on the court ever together. But they keep doing. They keep playing like, like a lover's triangle. Like it's Durant and Booker, and then Booker goes out, and then Beal comes in, and it's Booker and Durant. Are lovers triangles still a thing? Can you still say that? Do they just call it a truple now?
The will they, won't they of the Suns. It's like, all right, in season 7, are they ever going to play all three of them? So they really haven't played. So I guess that's the thing. I have to sit out with the Suns right now because my whole premise is that all three of them should be enough to get you to be good enough. But like I said, I was souring on that notion last time, but I still need to see it. I'm going to be agnostic with the Suns at the moment.
Okay, so basically what we're saying is we're putting the Suns in like a special to be determined, we need more information category.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
You skipped over the Bucks really quickly. Do you agree with me? Like, can you give me a little bit of hope? Our quintessential human delusion, Ben? Do you want to give me a little bit of hope here?
The thing is, I just don't know if this is going to be the same team that's on the floor in April. And the entire setup of the team. I don't know if the bench, let's put it that way. I don't know if the bench is going to look the same in April, and I'm still kind of just waiting to see if that stabilizes or if there are big changes coming. I don't know, but that's when I watch it, I have my own sort of wait and see with the Bucks, which is I just have no idea if this is going to be the same team. Let's put it this way. I really don't expect Milwaukee to be running Malik Beasley pick and roll heavy offense in April. So I don't entirely know how to judge that other than to say, if it is what it is at face value, then I'm not sure they're a top 5 team in the league. And, we've only talked about like 4, 5, 6 teams in depth so far as candidates for these top teams. So, yeah, that's kind of where I'm my own personal holding period with Milwaukee.
So if we directly compare them to somebody like the Mavericks, like I know we spent a long time and I was nitpicking some stuff with their offense, but like I'm not that concerned about the Dallas Mavericks offense. Like when we get to the playoffs, I know what it's going to look like, right? Like I know what a Luka Doncic, Kyrie Irving type of offense is going to look like. On the flip side, like I don't trust their defense, right? Whereas like the Bucks, theoretically, you should be able to hang your hat on their defense. Like that's what they've been able to do the last couple of years. But with that being the main thing to hang your hat on, I don't feel confident in their defense right now. I think there are too many holes. There are too many gaps where they can be attacked. And then even if we go to offense for them, that's still looking really gross. And so when you have like both sides of the ball and you're like, I'm not really confident in them playing either one of these at a high level, like I just can't put you that high. I'm not saying I can't switch. Like, we're allowed to change opinions. Maybe that should happen a little bit more in life sometimes, Ben. But I would like my opinion to be changed first before I do.
Okay, fair enough. What about some other teams that, are we out of teams that are in this fringe category, or the rest of the teams just feisty and good? What do you think about a team like, go ahead. I
was going to say Golden State Warriors.
That's what I was going to ask you anyway, yeah.
I'm glad I interrupted you there.
Yeah, okay. So I'll take the mantle on this one because I feel like they're a team constructed on a knife's edge where when it's working, all the concepts are working, all the concepts are clicking, the beautiful flowing movement in the offense and the Steph Curry shootingness of it all, and you have a lot of bodies and depth, 6, 7, 8 guys that can play. You're putting Gary Payton II on the court. You're throwing different defensive looks at people. Then you have a team that can be good enough in the playoffs on offense and then possibly could be very good on defense, and that gives you your good margin for victory. It's very whimsical to me, Cody. It's a tricky balance to get. Specifically, if you just go through from like the perspective of the different players on the roster from night to night, just start with the idea that Andrew Wiggins and Klay Thompson can struggle. They can be very inconsistent. Andrew Wiggins is struggling with his shot. If you take away Andrew Wiggins' shot, what does that do to the spacing or really to punishing the way teams defend someone like Steph Curry? We're going to have to talk about what's going on with Steph Curry. I don't understand it. How is this happening? Steph Curry right now, 34 points per 75 on plus 12% true shooting. Isn't he in like his 15th year? What is going on? Have people found the fountain of youth? What is happening?
I was going to say the fact that we still have some hope in the Warriors is the biggest testament to how nuts Steph Curry is as a scorer, as an offensive player. It's unbelievable what he's able to do. Yeah. And I think the double-edged sword here is, we talked about the fact, I think I said that I wouldn't be surprised if they had the best record in the West by the end of the season. And I'm going to stick with that, right? I still think that I can hold that opinion and not see them as an inner circle or even bubble title contender, because I do think a big part of this is that the Chris Paul minutes coming from the bench are a huge way, are a really significant way of buoying their net rating across an 82-game season. But we've seen Chris Paul struggle with injuries, with size, with age, Ben, across the playoffs the last couple of years. A. B, the playoffs, we talked about this. I don't even remember which episode it was. It must have been the last couple of months here. But I referenced the fact that in the playoffs, it's actually more valuable to have those minutes when you have your superstars together as being really good, as opposed to spreading them out to the bench. And I don't necessarily know if I have any evidence that like the Chris Paul, Steph Curry starting lineups in the playoffs are going to have any kind of astronomical net rating numbers. So I think those are some of my concerns too.
Yeah, and I'm not even sure that like what you said about the bench buoying the team, I'm not even sure that's accurate in this case, because just in the small sample we've had, 11 games, the Warriors are plus 7 per 100 with Chris Paul on the floor. So there you go. Okay, they're buoying the bench units when Steph Curry goes to the bench, but the starting units, Steph Curry, when he's on the court, are being outscored by 2 points per 100. It's not like the starting unit is doing really well and then the bench unit is also holding down the fort or increasing the lead. Like when Draymond Green's on the court right now, again, these are all very small samples, but they're being outscored by 4 points per 100. So it's, to me, this thing of, I don't know if Dario Saric is going to be the great fill in the pick and pop spacing bench player defender that someone like Otto Porter Jr. was 2 years ago. I don't know if Klay Thompson is not going to be a negative or have problems defensively or shoot you out of games. I don't know what to make of where Andrew Wiggins is as a player. There's still a small team. There's still an old team. I'm not really sure how fast they are as a team, and pace and speed and intensity and quickness seems to be something that just slightly every day becomes a little bit more important in the NBA with how sharp and precise some of the actions and the skills are. As an aside, that's another concern I have about the Bucks when they materialize. I just sometimes wonder, like, is the big bruising size of the Bucks, has that become passé in the roster construction they have? So, yeah, it's a tough one for me with Golden State. I have a hard time seeing them sort of run the regular season right now.
I didn't realize that Andrew Wiggins was shooting 13 points worse than league average relative to true shooting percentage.
Yeah, he's struggling.
But I think Chris Paul being 12 points worse than league average for true shooting percentage and still having like that positive net rating when he's on the court is quite the testament to how he's able to kind of be the captain of the ship when he's out there with the bench. But I think overall, in terms of like the Warriors or the Bucks, I think I would still actually have the Bucks a little bit higher than them in like a power rankings for Inner Circle.
Yeah, that makes sense. And just to put some numbers on it, to be clear, Chris Paul this season is 6 of 37 from downtown. That's 16%. Andrew Wiggins is 4 of 26. That's 15%. So this is the degree of shooting slump we're in. Obviously, it's going to turn around, but there's a big difference between Wiggins making 32% of his threes and 40% of his threes. So any other teams here that how do you feel about the Knicks? No. No.
We can save them for another time, but I don't think the Inner Circle talk is relevant.
No, I don't know. Not Inner Circle. I'm saying like, I guess I'm asking, are we out of fringe teams? Is that there's no more?
I guess I'll say it. You know, Ben, I'll say it. I'll fall on the sword here. Do you really think that there's no chance that the Clippers thing works out?
How do you feel about the Cleveland Cavaliers? How do you feel about the young Thunder?
I think the Thunder are still, they're not quite to the. Are we still talking Inner Circle type stuff? Is that I don't think they're a fringe really.
I think we're out of. I think we've run out of teams here that can be legitimate fringe kind of, at least in my head where we are. Yeah.
What's going on with the Cavaliers?
That I don't know about. I'm a little concerned about that.
Yeah, I was a lot higher than them going into the season, and what we're seeing is really not what I was expecting.
I think it's okay. I think it's okay. There's been some injuries, and they weren't all healthy, and we still have very small samples. And the sample, when you actually look at like the shooting luck and things like that, I don't think it's a disaster. I'll tell you one quick hitter before we wrap up the show that is a disaster. And I mentioned it recently, and you made a joke earlier about, going, or maybe I made a joke about saying many wrong things in the preview show. We had this discussion about possible outcomes for teams that could do well in the regular season. And the New Orleans Pelicans, you and I disagreed on. And it's just not good in New Orleans, Cody. It's not good. It's not happening.
Am I wrong? Does Zion just look like a lot less springy than he did when he was like champion finisher at the rim?
Oh yeah, absolutely. He's just carrying too much weight. Mm-hmm. I mean, he's such an incredible athlete that he can move the way he moves at his size anyway, but doesn't have the same burst around the basket. Now, I don't actually think that's like the main thing in New Orleans. I just think that's the thing that, you don't have an MVP level nuclear weapon offensive force to rescue you and like carry you to some level of a top 4 or 5 seed, depending on how the other pieces fall in place. I think it's everything. I think it's not having Trey Murphy III. I think it's Zion. I think it's the way Brandon Ingram's playing. I think it's some injuries. I think it's not finding the right lineup balances or a scheme that necessarily really works for what they have there. I'm not saying it's a lost cause, but the start, if we want to talk about starts that have gone south, I mean, I think they started like 4-1 or 4-2, but it just did not look good. It did not look good. And when you look at things like shooting luck and opponent quality, not looking good. Whereas the Cavs, at least still, I'm not punting the Cavs yet.
Okay. And defensively for the Pelicans, I feel like in terms of Zion and Valanciunas out there together, Zion still kind of has this mentality where I feel like he freestyles sometimes where he's like, and don't get me wrong, Zion makes incredible plays. I can't remember who it was. I think it was the Mavericks. That was a close game, I'm pretty sure. He had a huge clutch block against somebody, chased them down. It was unbelievable. It was like classic looking like what we want out of Zion. So like Zion's still able to muster some of these incredible plays. but he'll still be like, oh, I'm going to go help in the middle of the court. But then like the guy that has to cover for him is Valanciunas on defense. And he's not necessarily the quickest guy that's going to like cover all of these mistakes. So I think there's this tough chain of reaction that just isn't, they're not clicking. The chain is not clicking out there. They're just not on the same page, it seems like, defensively. And then offensively, like you said, I just don't love the fit. And I know Valanciunas isn't necessarily like the key to their offense or anything, but the fit between like Valanciunas, Zion, Brandon Ingram, and then of course like CJ McCollum, I wish him the best because I know he's having that lung issues again. So I don't know how long he's going to be out there. It's just the kind of construction that I don't love, Ben, and I don't necessarily know how they get themselves out of that kind of construction.
Cody, I'm contractually obligated to ask you this question before we go. Would you like to put the Houston Rockets in your fringy, really good team contender bubble tier? I don't know what we're calling any of this stuff. How are you? We've talked about a lot of teams. Do you think the Rockets are also a legitimately strong basketball team? They're now 6-3. They beat the Nuggets the other night.
So they did beat the Nuggets. This is this is a weird situation I'm having with the Rockets. I've watched them just a couple of times, and I feel like every time I watch them, it isn't the Rockets that people are talking about. Like every time I watch them, like, wow, I wish Şengün was like better. And then I'll like go and watch some highlights and look at some stats, and I'm like, oh my God, maybe he is better. You know, like there's a lot of stuff going on that I feel like I'm just not seeing. I do think defensively, like they're just not a train wreck last year, and that was one of the things I was looking for this year. Is Dylan Brooks looks really good and physical. Fred VanVleet, he just has the incredible hands when he's going in the pick and roll. So even if someone is like rolling down to the basket, he can go down and do the Kyle Lowry, Chris Paul swipe and cause some havoc there. His pull-up game, like I just feel like there's a lot of times where their offense is just like, all right, Fred, like here comes the screen, let's pull up from three, and it kind of works out for them. So I still think there's kind of a mess across the board, but I'm starting to see like they're an interesting team. I don't think they're anything beyond just interesting at this point.
Should we do most improved player candidates next episode?
Ooh.
Yeah. I mean,
who are you trying to say? Are you saying the Rockets?
Oh, yeah. I'm thinking of a Rocket.
Okay.
Yeah.
You must really think Dylan Brooks' shooting is here to stay, don't you?
To support this show, check out patreon.com/thinkingbasketball. It's the best way to directly support us. Also, of course, now that the season started, you get access to our daily leaderboards for teams and players that we reference throughout the show. We use to research our videos. That's available for our deluxe members. We also have a community, and this weekend we are doing our next live Q&A. I believe that is Saturday, the 18th of November. Every time I think of a Saturday in November, Cody, I think of Saturday, November 5th, 1955. That's where my brain wants to go. That's
Why?
That's when you go back in time and Back to the Future. Saturday, November 5th, 1955. Yeah. Do you have any final parting thoughts before we wrap this one?
Those like the people that come up with the questions for these, what'd you just call them? What is it? What is it that's happening?
The live Q&A.
The live Q&A. Thank you. Live Q&A. Yeah. They're such a fickle little bunch because, like, if I make fun of them and I'm like, oh, they're going to ask ridiculous questions, and then they're going to, right? So I don't want to like bend. They're like a particle that like you look at them and like sometimes they're a wave and sometimes they're not. Like I don't know what to do. Whatever. Just ask some questions that are good, people.
Thanks for listening to this one all the way through with us, and of course, as always, I hope you're having a great day.